in your name, Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:07. And I'll let Christie do roll call.
Keith Moore,
I'm here.
Cameron Kirk. Here. Giovanna Ross. Here. Jim Schlickman.
Here.
Jeff Jennings.
Here.
Randy Clay.
Here.
And Todd Zach.
I have the quorum. I'll ask you to rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Giovanna. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie. Motion made and a second. All in favor? Minnie said Mrs. Hampton said we do not have any recognition, but I did want to bring out, it was pointed out to me today that Mrs. Hampton received the Community Excellence Award Friday night at the Chamber of Commerce Gala. So it was specifically for, I'm going to read from this here, for her attention to making herself acquainted with the school district 7 months in advance of taking the position, as well as her commitment to Better Together, which applies not only to the district personnel and the community and meeting the fentanyl crisis head-on with transparency and education. The Chamber felt she was very deserving of the recognition. So,
That's awesome. I did not know that. That's great. Congratulations.
And well, we did have recently, if you didn't see, Stephanie Bieneman was voted in the district as Teacher of the Year. She gets a bigger recognition this year, but we did go to her classroom, made her run through and do a tunnel. So she was awesome.
And that was on
Later.
Facebook, but you weren't. What?
Who listed things on Facebook?
I think they're still working on posting all the things.
Oh, okay.
awesome. Anything consent agenda? Okay. I entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Cameron, is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda? That's everyone. We have some action items, starting with the calendar.
We do. So bringing to you the proposed 22-23-24 school calendar. So 3 different versions of calendar went to staff for a vote, and version B was voted landslide vote.
Didn't see why.
Most popular. So the goal was to obviously stay within our hours, and then a few highlighted things that we were trying to do. Working with the city on Lick Skillet days. So that September 29th puts a PD day. We just move the day of the PD day to be that Lick Skillet day, so that traffic of town becomes difficult, and that way it allows families, if they want to go, to participate in Lick Skillet days as well. So calendar B meets the number of hours that we want to go, which keeps the number of days for students and staff the same as this year's calendar. It does add an extra PD day at the beginning, separates out the PD at the beginning day, gives our 3 days with a down day before students arrive, which helps if you've ever been through first few days of school and all those meetings. It's kind of a marathon race, so that down day does help everybody just get prepared for that day students come. It does add a staff work day in November is moved to the week of Thanksgiving, but gives students off that entire week of Thanksgiving, which seems to be a trend that schools are going to. Gives staff really like the 2 weeks of Christmas, a whole entire 2-week break off, and keeps spring break. Easter falls weird next year. There's not much separation between spring break and Easter. So that's probably was the biggest concern in those areas. But all in all, this does still put us out before Memorial Day, even with the built-in snow days and the possibility of additionals. Put us out before Memorial Day. For going forward and planning, my goal is to develop a district superintendent advisory committee. And next year, I'd like just to kind of say, here's your parameters. Here's the things we need to stick in with and let them develop that. So it's not just on administration or central office, it can be on staff to help develop that as well.
I know last year, or for this school year, we did the change on this, the spring break to align with CTC. Is it in
It
the
is.
Blue Springs, is it aligned?
It's the same, yeah. Yes.
Any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the 2023-2024 district calendar as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the 2023-24 district calendar. All in favor? Is everyone? Budget revision.
Ooh, Shelley. She's not gonna be very happy, but I do want to tell her that today's her birthday.
Happy birthday.
And when we asked her, what are you doing today for your birthday?
Spending a
She
board
said,
meeting.
I'm going to a board meeting.
Spending a board meeting. How else would you spend your 50th birthday, right?
It's a 450.
Oh, a milestone.
Yeah. Might as well spend it with some fun, right? This really, I felt like this was kind of a short and simple budget revision. Most of the revenue is all related to grants or career ladder, which we're adding back in. A little sweet piece of that is the Hollis and Miller settlement, which we have received those funds, so that's in that revenue. We did an estimate for the food sales to the pupil. We haven't had that for the last couple of years because of COVID. All the lunches were free, so I kind of looked back at the prior years and got that, as well as the title carryover funds. So the total increase in estimated revenue was just the 1.1 million, so that's kind of nice. On the expense side, really just a lot of those adjustments to salaries were relating to those same things where we added the revenue, the career ladder, the preschool grant, and any of the carryover funds for title, special education, as well as increasing the paraprofessional because of the last board meeting. So what we did in order to find that paraprofessional extra money was go just through the budget with a fine-tooth comb. So when you're looking at those revenue or those expenses and they say December budget review, that's what that is referring to. It's just all those adjustments we made trying to find that extra money. And then the art budget revision, which we had just a small change in that of how we were spending those funds. So really that's why I said it was kind of a short and sweet budget revision, just more revenue into the budget than expenses, so that's kind of nice.
But cleaning up.
Cleaning
Cleaned
up.
up $670,000.
Yep.
And some of it was, there's quite a bit still in virtual education from the past few years, which was appropriately budgeted, but we just kind of monitored that to where we felt it was going to fit and meet the needs of this school year.
There's a couple of line items in there related to taxes. You don't understand what that.
On the delinquent part,
Yeah.
that was just me. If you look at the three of them at the code at the beginning where it says 1, 3, and 4, it was just me kind of tweaking where I think those revenues are going to come in because we changed our tax levy.
Okay. So that's delinquent coming to us.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's the delinquent word scared me.
Yeah, well, where the negative of the 25,000, that was because we've have less coming into 1 and more going into 3 or 4. So that's just kind of just reallocating those a little bit.
That last number is what fund? It's 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So she
Yeah.
really just moved from Fund 1 into different funds. So.
Yeah, because our tax levy changed.
So every year we get, this time of the year, we get a lot of the tax money coming in from all the different
All the
counties.
counties.
And then obviously throughout the whole year, we trickle in delinquent taxes, we get that.
Yeah, okay. I just saw delinquent. Okay.
Yeah, that's just me kind of tweaking to see how that works with the new levy that we did.
Thank you for explaining.
So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And thanks for finding $670,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, try to do that again next month.
I could do that with my own budget.
Yeah, right.
Any questions, comments? Budget revision. I entertain a motion in a second to approve the budget revision number 2.
So moved.
Your second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Randy. I have a motion in a second. All in favor? And everybody's favorite policy updates.
But this is our third reading of it, so we've looked them over, we've discussed them, and this is just the final approval of all of them. And it does, I want to reiterate that it does include, outside of that we are making one personal change, which is at the recommendation of our district nurse, which is policy JHCAP, that we're going to say the individual health plan will and the individual education health plan may include. So we're just changing some more wording there, which I'll get that specific wording to Christy, which we'll get to MSBA. But other than that, it's the same policies we've been looking over, nothing major, just a lot of little changes that usually come from legislation.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I'll ask for a motion and a second for the approval of MSBA policy updates 22. So moved. Jim? Is there a second?
I will second.
Jeff? A motion and a second. All in favor? Is that everyone? Move on to your some reporting.
Yeah, we've got Tom and Chris, and you state assessment report.
Every year we kind of get a grade card from the state of Missouri, from DESE, and that's our annual performance report. As we transition from MSEP 5 to MSEP 6, that's changed a little bit. So some of the data that we're going to talk about, I'll have to explain a few things, and there are things that are somewhat limited that we've been able to get in the past. I asked Chris to join me. He, as the testing coordinator, he gets all of those raw scores and raw data from the state when they come in. We break them down, and Chris and I have been working on this, so I asked him to join me this year through most of this presentation. So as we move to MSEP 6, they break our grade down into really two categories. The performance metrics, which are test scores, and then graduation rates, things such as that, and then the continuous improvement metrics, which Mrs. Hampton, we're starting to work through that process now. So as we transition to MSEP 6, you can kind of think of how that's broken down. Tonight we want to spend talking about the performance metrics, our test scores, and things such as that. So when we're talking about performance, they're breaking into 5 categories. Academic achievement, that is our EOC scores at the high school level, and Algebra 1 at the middle school, and then our MAP scores. And those are broken into 2 categories, status and growth. Status is how we're scoring right now. Growth is scoring how we improve year over year. Growth is also broken down into growth and progress. And growth measures, 5th graders take this test this year. How do the 5th graders score a year from now? So it's different group of students, but it's the same test for a grade level. And progress is we're tracking 5th graders take this test this year. How do they score as 6th graders? So that's broken down. So it can get fairly confusing fairly quickly. So I just wanted to hit the main points. Success-ready students, those are students as they graduate high school, whether they go into a career field, a tech field, or post-secondary or college, tracking those students, graduation rates, and then graduate follow-up. Are we reaching out to our graduates 180 days afterwards to seeing where they are? So that's how the performance metrics are broken down. As we get into that, I'm going to have Mr. Nichols. He's just going to give you a little bit of demographics and background just on the current state of Oak Grove School District. Go ahead, Mr. Nichols.
So the DESE website has posted a lot of good information in some very legible and easy to understand statistics. Just some overview of some numbers here. Notice, and I'll talk about these numbers and statistics and where we are in comparison with other conference schools. You see the K-12 enrollment, expenditure per pupil, the attendance rate, and then our free and reduced lunch eligible rate. And we'll also talk a little bit about the ACT composite score.
Sorry, Mr. Nichols. And just as a comparison, a couple of big things. The expenditures per pupil, the state average is a little over $13,000 per student. So the district's under that. And the free and reduced is about 30%. for the state average, and then the ACT composite, we're exactly the same as the state at 20.6. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So a little educator overview, just about where we're at with our teachers. Classroom size, 16 to 1. Experience of professional staff, 14.9 years. And then our 3-year retention rate is 76.9. And over the past 3 years, that's high above the state average. Well above the state average there. Our enrollment numbers, just a 3-year trend. We've got a little yo-yo effect kind of going on with pre-K, with being high in 1920 and then dipping down and coming back up, trending upward. And then overall, as a district, the past 3 years, trending downward just slightly in our enrollment numbers. So K-12 enrollment numbers here. And then pre-K enrollment numbers on the trend back upwards since 2020, 2021. Just kind of comparison of expenditure per pupil. Mr. Huffington mentioned around 13,000 per year is the state average, and see where we are kind of in the middle of the pack there at 10,423 with other conflict schools in comparison. Percent of students eligible for free and reduced lunch compared to conference schools at 21.8.
Did you pull the comparison to 18-19 by any chance, or do you?
Yes, so 18-19 on this one, we'll see here it's 33.7, and it trend downward. Now, we'll also have to keep in mind that in 2020, 21, 22, free and reduced lunch really didn't matter because everyone was.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
I checked with Lisa Reeder this week, and she shared with me that we're at about 31% right now. So now that that program has ended, we're back up to about 31%. And you kind of see the same with the state kind of trending downward the past couple of years. Comparison, our ACT score, composite score, at the top of the conference in that, 20.6, our ACT composite. And I found it interesting on this slide, the percent of graduates taking the ACT. So we have about 50% of our high school graduates taking the ACT before graduating. If we look back to 17-18, there was state funding for all students to take the ACT prior to graduation. That went away, and you see the effect that that's had on the scores, or on the number of students taking the ACT.
What's the cost now for ACT?
When it's 45, it's written at 55, it's.
And so kind of a 5-year trend of our ACT scores staying above state average over the past 5 years. Graduation rate trending upwards. Last year, 97.6 graduation rate with a total of 120 graduates last year. So student outcomes, one of the metrics that Mr. Huffington talked about is what do our students do after graduating college? So what statistics we're looking at there? Found that to be interesting. I've also got, I think I've got a trend. Nope, I do not. So with 30.2 and 22.8 attending some sort of college, and then 34.2 entering the workforce. Mr. Huffington?
Yep. I moved a couple of your slides.
Okay.
All right, so when we start talking about MAP scores, we go back and talk about MAP. That's the one everybody's concerned with. Their scores are calculated using an MPI, a MAP Performance Index, which really doesn't mean a whole lot to you. They give it a number, they quantify, give it a score. But students, as they are scored, are put into 4 categories: below basic, basic, proficient, advanced, advanced being the highest. So these numbers won't mean anything to you. So what I did is I actually used the old scoring calculation for MAP. So And DESE has changed their scoring calculation, so this isn't an actual several pointer on it. I couldn't figure it out, I'll just use my finger. So our MAP scores here, you'll see for Oak Grove is 354.1, but if you look at our actual MAP score, it's higher than that, it's 397. So, but in MSEP 6, they just calculated differently. I don't have access to other districts' information in order to calculate it. So I had to use the old calculation method so we could compare it to other districts. So that's what I did here. I simply took the old calculation from MSEP 5, used our conference schools and the state average. Oak Grove is in the orange, the state's in purple, the rest of the conference schools are in blue. So you can see ELA MAP scores as a district, we outperformed the entire conference and the state on our ELA MAP scores, fantastic scores. But those numbers are not our actual MAP index numbers, so don't worry about that. But to compare it, I had to use that calculation. The graph on the right represents our 4 scoring categories. One on the left is below basic, then proficient, and advanced. So you can see those categories. But in order to show apples to apples with the conference, I had to use the old calculation. Highest in the conference in ELA. And that's broken down here. This is one of Chris's slides. You can see this by grade level, and on the right are the 4 categories below basic, proficient, and advanced. Those are grades 3 through 8, and then English 2 is a high school EOC. And you can see how those scores are broken down. Here's math. Pleasant Hill had the highest scores in the conference. That calculation's a little bit off. Once again, the state, that's their new score, but our old score. So that looks like we scored behind the state average. In actuality, we didn't. There wasn't enough information to calculate the state score. But once again, one of the highest scores in the conference, scored very well for MAP, and there are 4 categories broken down on the right. Once again, that's grade level scores. We also have Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 EOC scores at the bottom. For this graph right here, if you remember, our Algebra 1 kids in 8th grade take the EOC in 8th grade as middle school students. So that 8th grade score you see above it, that is only the kids that took the 8th grade MAP. Most of your 8th grade, well, all of your 8th grade algebra students are in that Algebra 1 category, even though it's an EOC. So that's a little bit deceiving of why you see those percentages broken down. Science, you can see once again, scoring very high right behind Pleasant Hill. For science scores, one of the highest scores in the conference. Once again, well above the state average, broken down on the right. And then there's our, by grade, we take science 5.8 and then biology 1. Broken down, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, so please feel free to ask questions. Social studies, we didn't have enough information to calculate a MAP index score with our social studies scores. These are actually just our high school EOC for social studies. Those are the only scores we had available, and we don't have scores for other districts, so there was no way for us to compare it. But I wanted you to look at that, it's actually scored very well. So those are our MAP and EOC scores combined. And you can see how those are broken down for the 4 categories. So here's probably the best thing I can show you. This is our end of course assessments. These are high school scores. So this is kind of the finished product. So as students move through our system, they get into high school, they take their algebra, their biology, their English, and their government test. That's the last time they're really tested by the state. So this is kind of the end product. And you can see the Oak Grove scores are on the left, state scores are on the right. On the state scores in Algebra 1, it says middle school with no score. For the state, they put all of their kids in Algebra 1. They don't break it by grade level, where our score report is actually broken down by grade level. So those middle school, that's your 8th grade algebra students. But you can see we outscored the state in every single category. Well above the state average. In fact, between basic and below basic's the lowest level, and basic, the score is 380. The state was in the below basic category as a state in Biology 1 EOC, where we were well above that. English 2 finished proficient, government finished proficient, and Algebra 1 middle school students finished advanced. So just really a great job overall by our staff, just the dedication that they put into it, and our community and putting the importance of education with our students. So what are we doing with that data? How are we using it? Well, we want to continue to use that in the best means possible. We've already identified our Missouri Learning Standards, the ones that are of the highest priority. We can take our item analysis from our test. What our item analysis is, it's a breakdown of questions. So you look at the question, okay, that's this learning standard. Are we teaching this standard to the level that we need to so our students are scoring well? So we can take that item analysis, break it down by standard, so we can basically customize our curriculum to help improve that. Identifying that with our teachers. We can identify individual students that need additional supports and get some interventions in place. One of the things that's really helping with that this year is bringing back Career Ladder. We're seeing a lot of extra tutoring after school, so we can target those students and help them continue to improve. We've already created a curriculum team that's in place, that's moving forward. A lot of good stuff happening there. Data team is on its way, so we can continue to break down that information as it comes in. So instead of teachers taking the time to break down their scores, the data team breaks it down for them, shows them where it goes and how they can help their students better succeed. And then we're continuing to look at adopting an assessment tool as we move forward to help anticipate our state scores. So a lot of things on how we're using the data. The college and career ready component, we've already adopted industry recognized credentials or IRC opportunities. That's new in the last couple of years. And then post-graduation placement, that's also been improved. If you remember a couple years ago, we weren't tracking those kids as well as we should have. There was a handful of kids that we weren't able to follow up with at 180 days. Brought our scores down from the state. We've fixed that also. And then in technology, we just continue to develop that calendar for students and how we can help them prepare. Just want to say a huge thank you definitely to our staff and the great job that they've done. This has been a priority for them, our administrators. This has been a big priority, and we have lots of conversations. While we don't prepare students to take the test, we feel like we prepare them, and so when they take the test, they are prepared. And then just thank you to the board for allowing us to do a lot of those things. Bring back Career Ladder, I think is going to be a huge benefit. We haven't seen that with these scores yet because these are last year's scores, spring of 22, but I think great things are coming in the future. Anything else, Mr. Nichols?
Any questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have our administration update.
Michelle, do you want to share a little bit about your department?
The new classroom is going well. We're adjusting to adding the new students at arrival and dismissal time, so that's changed a little bit. We're tweaking our schedule for the new classroom, trying to get lunch schedules and breaks for our parent or teacher in there just to make everything go smooth. We've received most of the items that have come in. We are receiving our playground equipment in February, and then there were awning guys supposed to come out on Wednesday. No, it's no way. So meet with us to go over finalization of that, and then after you get the awning in, then we can have the poured flooring for that end of the playground, so we'll have a surface that the kids can ride bikes on and everything out there. We had a few kiddos that have moved, but then when Friday we did, our parents as teachers had a full day screening, and we qualified about 6 or 7 kiddos for that, and they're doing a couple more screenings this week. So we will probably be full in the next couple weeks again, so I think that's everything.
Thank you, Michelle.
Just kind of wanted to go through some numbers. So since we have came back from Christmas, we have had 10 new students join us at the primary, 8 being kindergartners and 2 being second graders. So we've really started adding. We only lost 3 kids, 0 kindergartners. So that's how it usually happens, isn't it? But also, over the last few months, just wanting to thank you again for the Career Ladder incentive for our teachers. We have been able to offer not only tutoring opportunities to our kids, but also some exploratory activities and clubs for our kids, and just kind of wanted to go through some of them with you. We have had Get Fit Club, which is PPE, Art Club, obviously an art, Panther Performance Club, which is through Mrs. Bickle, our music teacher, Kinder Club for kindergartners who need a little extra academic boost, Kindergarten Book Buddies, which is just more of an exploratory tutoring extra activity for kindergartners after school. We have STEM Club, second grade book club, and our counselors also offering some family therapy before and after school. So huge benefits to our families and to our kids, and getting them in the buildings before and after school, and then also telling our teachers we appreciate what they are doing by giving them that extra career ladder stipend. So, and then this month our character word is self-control, and we always honor our kids at the end of every month with a little recognition for our kids for showing that we see them and they're a special character that they show at school. So that's it.
Thank you.
Elementary, I just want to piggyback off of what Mr. Huntington and Mr. Nichols were talking about. We have a lot of activities going on with curriculum right now. Our teachers are working a lot on connecting our Wonders program, our ELA program, to the Missouri standards. Spending a lot of time identifying those priority standards and seeing where those gaps are in the curriculum and beefing that up. Also spending time in the math curriculum and making sure that we're aligned to the state standards. So our teachers have been very busy creating those pacing calendars, creating those lessons to fulfill what the expectations are, and what we know is going to be on the MAP test, because we know what percentages are in certain areas, and so we've been spending a lot of time on that. Senate Bill 681 is an area that we've been talking about off and on, but it really focuses on reading instruction and reading intervention, and so we are excited to get several materials and manipulatives to support that reading instruction. We're getting some magnetic letters and some whiteboards for our tables as we are doing some interventions in the area of reading. We're also getting some math manipulatives to boost our math scores, to get kids digging into those tools to help support their math instruction. Also want to say we're getting some new exterior doors on the cafeteria. Just started today. Very excited about that. They installed 4 today. They've got 4 to go. 2 on the cafeteria left, and then 2 over here for them to install. So excited about that new renovation. It did cause us to do a little changing at the elementary with breakfast and lunch today and tomorrow. We did serve from our flex space, which is located in the upper hall. Did have to change our menus a little bit, but everybody did great. Kids did great, staff did great, and our kitchen staff did great. So very appreciative for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys. First things first, I want to recognize our winter sports. Our winter sports ended last week with wrestling ending before Christmas, and then our girls and boys basketball ended last week. All those programs are very competitive, and I want to just give a special thanks to all the coaches and parents for their continued support and commitment to our kids and our program. It's obviously that takes a lot of time away, but it's well worth it, and our students were all better by the end of the season and grew in that aspect. For just some building news, we are also having preparations and underway for our state assessments. We're doing some different things. One of the things that we're doing in our Panther Pride time is we're actually working on the 12 power words, like compare, contrast, trace, analyze, those types of things, which we feel like it's really important for students to understand what those words mean, because most of the time when they get into assessment questions, they see those types of words, they don't have a real good understanding of what they mean, and a lot of times they'll get stuck on that. So what we do is we take a word every week, we have it in a calendar, and then teachers actually talk about that in their Pride teachers, and then start practicing that within their daily lessons, and then also within their assessments. So that's one of the things that we're doing with that. We're also working on some practice tests, just kind of giving the students some ideas of what the question and assessment questions are going to look like. And then doing some online tools training. We'll be doing that coming up as well, where our students will actually get onto the computer and practice with some of those manipulatives so they can get ready to use those within their test. And obviously if they've done that and they kind of know what that looks like, they're a little bit more comfortable with it. So we feel like that's a huge piece of that as well. And then also as well, we'll have some staff training for our staff. Well, some of the things we have coming up, we will be doing our OGMS enrollment soon. Currently we're working on updating our course description guides, our course offerings, and enrollment forms. One of the things we're really excited about next year is the opportunity to offer some STEM classes and some Project Lead the Way classes. So we've been working on some descriptions for that, and then also what that's going to look like at grade level for each grade level. So we're super excited about that. And we're already doing some of those things in our IET classes now, and our kids are really responding to that well. So I'm excited to see how that progresses and what that looks like. Our enrollment process will be very similar to last year. We'll be electronic, so we'll send those course description guides, and we'll send that electronic catalog home to parents. They'll pick classes that way, and then we'll work that into our scheduling in the spring. One of the other things that we're working in within our building is our science department are looking at new resources for science curriculum, so we're really excited about that. I know it's been a while since our science curriculum has been updated, and they also have some new standards to look at and align those resources with. So we're just kind of excited to explore those new resources and see what what companies have to offer to bring in for our students as resources. The last thing I want to talk to you about, I kind of have an overview of a new program we're doing at the middle school and the high school. This is our eHall Pass program. I have Mr. Newman come up and kind of join me as well, but I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of a background on the eHall Pass. Mr. Newman and I actually attended a school safety forum that was put on by the Missouri School Board Association and the Missouri Association of Secondary School Principals. And one of the folks that came in and talked to us was with eHall Pass and talked a lot about just the different versions of eHall Pass and the things that you can use it for. And obviously we're always looking at ways to make our schools safer. But I can tell you one of the things that I talked to principals about that really stuck out to me was they talked about the instructional time that it's saving with kids being in the class. They talked about it. You can track actually the amount of time that kids are outside the classroom, and I do think it makes them a little bit more cautious and a little bit more aware of the time that they're spending outside of classes. But as you go through there, you can kind of look at that, and I just kind of went through some of the things so far as I've talked to the staff every week when we have a team meeting. We talk about the different things, some of the limits we've set on passes, some of the pros, cons, but we've had a really positive response from our staff. One of the big things, we can set volume limits. So I know one of the things, so for instance, if we're in our building, it's impossible for every teacher in every classroom to know how many kids are out in the hallway, okay? So what we can do is we can actually set a limit within our building or within a location to where only so many students can get a pass at one time. So we don't have to worry about 20 or 30 kids being out in the hallway, not knowing where they're at, not be accounted for. We can set, okay, there's 15 kids that can be out at one time. If it gets to 15, it'll deny that pass, and one of those passes checks in, then it'll send them a notification and they can go on the pass, okay? Some of the other things, we can use that for the nurse, the bathroom, problem areas in the building. Like for instance, I know our nurse likes it because she can set a limit. She can change that throughout the day. So like for instance, if she's working with a situation where it's a really an emergency and she can't have kids come down at that time, she may send something out and they'll come to the office and it won't allow them to write a pass to the nurse. So if there's emergency situations, they have some flexibility with that as well. And I know some of the things we've run into as well. For instance, we've already had a situation just since we started using this, and this is our second week of implementation, where a student was actually out of place in a different part of the building where they weren't supposed to be, and we found 2 other kids that were down there that didn't have a pass. And now we can track that, we can see where they're supposed to be. And at the middle school, just recently, we also got our new camera system, so it's nice because anytime they write a pass, it timestamps it and we can see where they're at in the building. So that's really nice as well. Like I said, the data is really nice. If you look at the bottom there's just some statistics, but really you can pull up about any statistic that you want. For instance, if you look at the bottom there, in the first week of our passes, we had 274 total passes at the middle school. There were 44 students that used all passes, okay? So that's less than 1% of our student population that used all their passes. So I know that was a big concern that, they're gonna run out of passes, they're not gonna be able to go do this, they're not gonna be able to do that. We haven't seen that has happened, okay? Same thing in the second week, it was actually 0.07% of our population that used all their passes. And I think the one thing too that we've talked to our teachers about is we've given them a lot of discretion that, hey, if a student's out of pass and they need to go to the bathroom or they need to go to the nurse or they need to go to the office, they can still write them a pass. It's called a proxy pass, and it does not count against their passes. Some of the classroom management things, we're able to see, for instance, if we go to the 8th grade bathroom, and we know that we're having an issue down there, we can pull up how many kids have requested to go to that bathroom during a certain hour. If we know that's a hot spot and kids are meeting up down there, okay? Or if we know that they're trying to meet up in the library, whatever the situation is. So we can look at that immediately and find out what kids are if we have that type of situation. Or if we have students that we know that we probably don't want them in the building alone together, we can also limit that. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this program. I know that Mr. Newman is kind of the one that took some of the initial parts of this through the company and has worked with the help. Do you have anything?
Really looking at this from the high school perspective, this has been very valuable and increased the safety of our building. And I noticed that day one, I actually took some pictures early in the morning, day one, when we first began the process, and teachers argued with me and they said, no, you took that picture at 7:30 at night when no one was in the building. And I had to show some of them the timestamp. I'm like, nope, that was in the middle of 6 hour. I promise you it was during the school day, because our hallways were empty. Our students were in class, they were learning. We didn't have students roaming. We didn't have students meeting up in bathrooms. It's been a great thing for students to gain responsibility and change some routines on, especially passing times of not roaming the building, then going to class, and then when they get to class, then asking to go to the restroom or the counseling office or the office to pick up a form. They know now the certain times of the day that they can take care of that. And kind of as Mr. Kemp also explained, we had 46 out of 554 students in week 1 use all 5 passes. Okay, in week 2 we had 25. Of course, week 2 was a 4-day school week. Total passes, I imagine those are going to go up and up as we utilize this more in our building. But I mean, basically, even if a student arrives late to school, our office staff uses that as a proxy pass instead of the old handwritten note, and that accompanies the student back to class. So we are seeing much more of that. It's really helped with Panther Pride time as well, because it's been really easy for students to say, well, I need to go to so-and-so's class to tutor. And it was kind of the trust system. Students would then, most of them would go to where they asked to go to. Some of them would not, and they would roam the building. We were finding 30, 35, 40 kids on some days just roaming and walking. And now we see very, very few students out. So that has been a very big positive. Also, if we ever had a lockdown, if something happened at school, we would know where students are. We could look and we could find any students who were not in class, find out where they were, or at least where they said they would be, and that would help us find those students as well. I have lots of positives listed on here that you can read. I asked our teaching staff, just as this morning, of any negatives to add. I have not received a negative response from our teachers. And one great example is Russ Adams is using this. And that was one of the big shocks. If
I don't
he can use
understand
this
it at all.
Right.
What is it?
Then it's great.
I mean, what's the E part?
Yeah.
Is
It's
it
just electronic on their Chromebook. Right.
It's
Yep,
just
electronic. Yeah.
Okay.
What's nice about it too is there's an appointment pass. So if a teacher wants a kid, like I have teachers that have kids set up on appointments to come on Tuesdays and Thursdays during Panther Pride. So it sends them an appointment, it sends them an invitation, they check out, we know exactly where they are, and it helps them manage that as well. And then there's also what's called an auto pass. So it doesn't interrupt class. A kid can just start an auto pass and say, I have to go to the bathroom. The teacher doesn't have to do anything. The kid starts the pass and they come back. But I can pull up a report. I can tell you, if a student's been out, it tells you exactly how many minutes they've been out of class. If it's over a certain amount of time, it will flag it and tell you that they've been gone longer than an allotted amount of time. So it is really, really good for accountability.
And myself, our office staff, Mr. Selke, counseling office, if we need to set an appointment because we need to meet with the student, we set the appointment, and that will alert the student and the teacher well ahead of time. And it's really started working well because it prevents a phone call into the classroom. And we're not interrupting classrooms. And it's, and if a student is coming because they need to meet with us, a lot of times they can put a reason on there and a description of what they need. We have it ready. Even Mrs. Dennert in the nurse's office, the student says they need something, a Band-Aid, she has it ready for them. And she's explained that to me a couple times. She has that ready for them by the time they get there. It's also greatly helped with student-to-student issues that we have, some drama issues, or if there's something going on, we can prevent those two students from meeting up during class. If one's out in the hall using the restroom, the other one requests it, it's denied because that student's out in the hall. They have to wait until that student returns. So that's been a great thing to keep those issues separated so they don't blow up during class in the bathroom or something like that.
Just intrigued by all this. Wow, education's come far, or backwards, or what, I don't know. But so who sets the parameters? Like,
we do.
You guys.
Yep. So I've set, I think you did too, our building's at 15 passes at a time. And we rarely get over 5 to 6 during a class time of students requesting to go restroom, nurse, wherever. Other passes really don't count against that limit. Teachers can always override it So if it's at 15 and they need to override it, create a proxy pass and appointment pass that won't limit those. So students still get to go where they need to go.
But for keeping, like you said, issues between students and keeping them from being in a location unsupervised, you
Yep.
guys set the parameters for those and.
Yep.
You can set it up, you can put it in there,
Yeah.
and it'll deny it. Like I said, it's the same thing for, if you, let's say you have a bathroom, and you know there's a bunch of kids going in at one time, you can set it to 1 or 2 at a time. I mean, you really set all that. And what I did, and I talked to Jacob about this, the company kind of gave us some suggestions on where to set those, and then we just started talking to other principals. There's a lot of schools that use this program, either this or Smart. There's no one called Smart Pass, but they're really, really similar. So I just kind of started talking to some of the other principals I know that use it, and they said, yeah, it works pretty good, just using those kind of default numbers. And what I've been doing, Randy, is just going into our team meetings every week and saying, hey, is this working? You know, and if we would start to see that there's a ton of kids that are over their limits or whatever, I think that's when we would look at it and see, what do we need to change? Do we need to change it? Yeah, we can control the time that, you know, if it's a bathroom pass or whatever, or it's a pass that the student creates, we can say, okay, well, that's good for 4 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. We can set all that too, and it'll flag that if they're over that amount of time. So that's how we found out. Like I said, we had a student the other day, it was in our media center, that had signed out to go to the main bathroom, and we got a flag that they had been gone too long. Well, they were down in the 8th grade hallway with another student that didn't have a pass. You know, and that's how we found them. We would have never even known where she was. So, yeah.
And just thinking back from issues I had, I could, obviously, during passing time, this would be of no benefit to pinpoint problems, but during class time, this along with your cameras could significantly reduce the number if something, vandalism occurred somewhere or something, yeah.
And it has an active dashboard that shows every student that's out at that current
We see
time
every single kid.
through the whole day. And if I see a concern on that, you know, I can immediately go to that location or that area and find out if there's something going on that shouldn't be going on. So another great thing for us.
The feedback from my teachers is that it just seems like the kids are more aware. They're using that passing time more wisely. They know they need to get to the bathroom, and they need to take care of that stuff, so they're doing it.
Well, obviously, kids at both your buildings are not, kids are gonna talk to you guys. Well,
Yeah.
what's the students' perspective of this?
At first, they were like, we hate it, but I think now they're figuring out it's not that big a deal.
Right. Doesn't change much at all. And like, I mean, as you see on here, you know, 25 out of over 500 students used all passes last week. And I mean, that really shows that we have it set pretty well right now, the parameters.
How many do they get a week? Is it
So
a week?
it's 5 per week, and that's the big responsibility part for the students. They can use those. They need 2 on Monday. They have 3 for the rest of the week. So they probably know that they need to be more responsible on one other day of the week and not use the pass. But they still, as you see on the back of the sheet, every student has at least 10 opportunities to be able to use the restroom, go by the office, the nurse, the counseling office. Lunchtime is completely unrestricted there in the commons because we have a bathroom, we have a water fountain, it's right there next to the office, the nurse's office. So that entire time, they can use that. Students who are arriving 1 minute before school, you can kind of take the before school option away. They still have 10 opportunities throughout the day to be able to use the restroom and do some other things that they need to do.
The 5 don't carry over though, do they? They just get
No.
5 per week and that's it.
Yeah.
No, they do not. They restart every week, and I've actually.
That's what Jimmy did. I've got 50 passes that last week.
And I've changed just a handful of our students that have some issues with attendance or responsibility with showing up to class on time, and it's been a continued behavior over the course of the year. I've changed them to 1 per day because I don't want them to miss school 2 or 3 days a week and then show up and have 5 passes to use in 2 days of school or 3 days of school. This is not beneficial for them.
Well, I would think just from a student's standpoint, you know, now there's an accountability piece that wasn't there before. 'Cause,
Right.
you know, if I get a piece of paper that says I'm going to the bathroom,
Yeah.
I can go wherever I want to.
That's right.
Where now, you're actually electronically tracking where this student is,
Yeah.
so that you could say, which in some cases, then I would think that student who was doing those things would say, well, this ain't no fun anymore. Now
Yeah,
they know where I'm at.
The biggest thing I had from students were actually students that had special circumstances, like they need unlimited bathroom breaks, so they need, and you can set those up in a special group to where you can change their pass settings. So that's the biggest thing I heard from students for those students. It's been really good.
Yeah.
You mentioned there's a dashboard. Is it totally passive, or can you set like an alert, say, hey, all of a sudden you said there's 15. Well, hey, we just hit 12. There's 12 kids roaming the halls, and you get some sort of alert? Or?
Yeah, you can set alerts. You can set it up kind of however you want.
And then it will change the color of the pass from green to yellow to red based on the time that they're out of the class. So if they're in the restroom and it's over 5 minutes, it turns yellow. 5 to 10 minutes, and then past 10, I believe that's when it turns red. To just show concern that the student's been out of the classroom for over 10 minutes, which sometimes is necessary, but not all the time.
You can make it transparent where all the staff can see it too, so they can see where all kids are.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Who would have thunk it?
Right?
One question for you. What was the process of like putting this in place like in the middle of January? It's like, I'm just thinking like big picture. This obviously changes a lot of what you're doing day to day. Like a semester, beginning of the year, like you said, obviously your research with other districts, you know, obviously I know there was some negative backlash with when we rolled this out, but like, what was the process of just?
For us, it was time. For me, at least, it was time because we weren't introduced to it until late in the fall, and we thought it was valuable enough that we should go ahead and start it now, and then also allow us to kind of work some of those kinks out in this semester, so that if we had to work anything out, we'd have it ready for next year too.
Yeah,
and talking to other principals, they're like, the rollout's not
wasn't bad.
difficult, right? They said the big thing is make sure you get the PD piece of it, and they've got a help desk. So, and I just told my staff, hey, look, I'm learning this as you're learning it, but they've got a great help desk. If you send something in, they usually respond right away. So, but that was why. It was just a timing thing.
How was it communicated to parents?
Well, we started this as a practice, as a trial when we returned from break, and so we tried that for a couple of days to see how that kind of worked before the guidelines were really decided upon, and then that before we first began the process. I can't remember the date. I believe it was January 9th when we started. We sent communication home the week before.
Yeah, and I sent something through School Messenger and then also sent the videos.
How the parents reacted?
I've had one parent complaint, and that's all.
I've had
The
two
entire time.
And one of them was about bathrooms, and the other one was about females. But really, once we discussed that they still have their passing time, they're like, okay, that makes sense. So that's been good.
Yeah.
Because whenever like she denies it, does it actually deny just the kid? Because the kid creates it themselves in class to just get up and leave. So then the kid just shows their device to their teacher, like, hey, I have bathroom access, and they take off.
Right.
I'm just thinking like the staff don't get put in a difficult situation of having to deny that anymore, do they?
No.
So that's probably a layer.
And they're not left in the dark now if a student, because we had some students that were leaving to go to the restroom 15 plus times a day.
Yeah.
And now they can see how many times they've been out during the day, which classes are you leaving, how many times are you leaving through the day. And so they really see that and they know that. That saves phone calls between teacher to teacher, emails between teachers.
Yeah, where is the student?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it really saves that process.
That's neat.
What's the cost associated?
I believe each building was at about $1,100. Yeah.
Per year.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
How'd you find out about that?
I felt like we were actually at a school safety seminar, and they had a rep that came in and was talking about it, and we just kind of started talking to some other principals around there, and they just talked about how much and like I said, the big thing that the principal had told me is just instructional time. The kids that aren't out in the bathroom 15 times a day, you can't replace instructional time. And he said the time that they're in the classroom is worth it.
How long have these types of programs been in existence?
I think just a
I
couple of
believe
years.
this one was like 3 years maybe. Something like
And there's
that.
some local like this, at least some that use it.
Yeah.
Warrensburg uses it.
Police Summon uses it, Warrensburg uses it. I think Blue Springs uses like Smart Pass.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised, like you said, you talked about your roamers that roam all the time. Like, you think they would get frustrated because now they're being denied their roaming time, but that would be a...
Yeah. And like I said, student routines have had to change, and I've watched them change, making sure they get business taken care of, whatever that is. If it's restroom, library, anywhere they need to go, they're doing that when they need to do it, and not waiting until class starts and interrupting.
That's good.
Is this in place nationwide?
Yeah, it's available anywhere.
Yep.
No
I think they got
ACL, no ACLU, you're turning Big Brother students yet?
Students do
So
not.
you're trying not to word it
Yeah.
as track, you're trying to use the word.
They do not carry
Monitor.
their devices with them. The devices don't go to the restrooms or anything. They stay in class. So that's where the responsibility of the student to do what they've asked to do and to follow through with that. that's where that falls in place. So really, it just replaces the paper pass and other outdated processes of
Provide some
Well,
oversight.
asking
Yes.
calls.
Yeah, the fact that it gives
Like
a,
your heavy hitters.
right, and it categorizes it for the entire staff.
Right.
Yeah, you don't know that a kid went to the restroom the hour before you were.
Right.
You've done this 5 times now.
Right.
Yeah, you know, they had no clue of that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the kids don't like, our kid, there's a kid in our building that has been out of class already, and I called that student in and said, do you realize you've been out of class this many minutes? They were like, better. I mean, I don't think they had any idea how much time they're missing.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, wow. Because it was significant.
Amazing stuff.
Thank you, guys.
I do have one unfortunate piece of information to share regarding A+. Department of Higher Education shared with us just a couple weeks ago that they are continuing the math requirement for A+, which I don't agree with. I've shared my frustration with the Department of Higher Education for that. Biggest reason is our seniors who took Algebra 1 their freshman year, the EOC, didn't get to take it due to COVID shutdown. Our students who took that in 8th grade, they did take that, obviously, so they're not as in much risk of not completing A+ as the other group of seniors. The math requirement is an advanced or proficient score on the Algebra 1 EOC, or a sliding scale of GPA and the ACT math composite score. If a student has a 3.0 or above, they can score a 15 on the ACT to meet the requirement. 16 is a 2.8 GPA, and a 17 or above on the math composite ACT score. That has to be a 2.5. Okay, and so that sliding scale for those students who did not get to take the Algebra 1 EOC, they have to fulfill that. As of right now, that's their only chance for A+. So that was frustrating to me. I've reached out to Connie Bestian at the Department of Higher Ed a couple times. Last year, they shared with us that it was all but certain they were going to completely do away with the math requirement. And we just now heard 10 months later that, nope, it's still in place. I don't know, I don't have a total number as of this day, how many seniors this will affect, but I'm going to be studying that over the next week or so. I've communicated that with parents. So they one shining light, they do have the option to take the ACT into post-secondary through the first semester. If they do take the ACT and pass that, get the required score, they can still get the A+ scholarship through next fall, as long as they're enrolled in a community college. So I'm hopeful, but it still worries me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Selby, do you have anything?
We're busy. Winter's wrapping up pretty quick. Panther Classic wrestling tournaments next Saturday. Hosting boys district basketball and hosting Scholar Bowl. We just got that today, so we'll be hosting District Scholar Bowl in March. Currently, I'm working with the Knights of Columbus they're donating some money to get our Special Olympics teams some new jerseys, some pullovers and some t-shirts, that kind of thing. Hopefully we might be able to get that in by the end of the season for Special Olympics. Misha area meetings have been going on. Really the big one there is talking about shortening the football season 1 week. I'm not sure if that's going to pass or not. Looking to add, we're not right now, boys volleyball becoming a Misha sport in the future. Quite a few St. Louis schools and some Kansas City schools starting to pick that up right now. But other than that, working with all my coaches here next week to set summer schedules. Trying to get on the same page with all of our sports and activities so that we're not wearing these kids out. So we're all going to meet together and knock out our summer schedules coming up. So those will be going out to the public soon so that people can start planning their vacations around that. Other than that, hoping that snow stays away so we can not reschedule activities.
Ground's too warm. I just just have a few things. So we do start, our CSIP surveys went out to all of our staff on Friday. Saturday surveys went out to community. I guess they went out Friday too. Friday and Saturday to parents and community. And then today went out to students 6th through 12th grade. So those surveys are out and they're open all this week. So if you haven't taken your survey yet, go ahead. There will be one patron links on Facebook, and then we'll continue to keep pushing that out, and we'll send a text to remind everybody as parents as well. Our first CSIP meeting is this Thursday. We have 35 committed members between our staff, administrators, board members, parents, patrons, and we've got 4 students, 2 middle school voices and 2 high school voices. So we've got a good group of people. We'll get that going. Borough Comprehensive came when we came back in January. When we came back for the semester, they came and kind of did an overview with staff of what referrals would look like at the building levels. So we've got this referral process going, and they told us it's a 2 to 6 week referral process by the time we make a referral to Borough Comprehensive for mental health services. By the time they get funding and work through insurance and all those pieces, but we've got a few who are starting services this next week, so that's fantastic. We've got a lot of counselors and building administrators have done a good job referring students. We've had several referred from each building to start with services. So we have 1 LPC and 1 support staff already designated to our district, and as we have those referral numbers grow, Borough will grow the number of staff that are here to support our students' mental health needs. So that's fantastic. We've been working through, Tom Shelley and I have been kind of working through Fund 4, where we are with Fund 4. So we did put 10 cents into Fund 4 of our tax levy. We know $250,000 of that's going to go to the track. So we've got a few other things. As Missy mentioned, we've got the elementary doors being replaced. We did some more flooring over Christmas break. Tom had mentioned that last week at the primary and at the high school in the elementary. We've got some bleacher repairs that we're going to be doing. We're going to be making high school bleachers ADA accessible, elementary bleachers ADA accessible, and just some general maintenance and repairs on all 3 sets of bleachers in the 3 buildings that have bleachers. We are in the hunt of another van. We're thinking minivan. We've got a couple of vans that are 15 years old, and so we need to kind of recycle those, not to be used with students. So we're pricing some minivans. If anybody has a really kind-hearted car salesman, let us know. Yeah, but we thought maybe minivans. We're going to price those, maybe cargo van with seating, but if we can seat. New laws don't let you purchase for a school district more than, yes, but 10 passengers. The vehicle has to be made for 10 passengers or less. So we were looking for pricing a couple of different things to try to get something new out of the Fund 4 for this year. And we've priced elementary blinds, mini blinds as well. We've got several, all of them need replaced. But we also know we need windows. So I'm working with a window, somebody in the construction field specializing in windows to make sure that when we replace our windows, it won't affect new blinds. Otherwise, we need to wait to install new blinds until we get new windows. So we're still working on that process. But we've got a lot of those things going on as far as Fund 4 expenditures. And then so our student information system, Tyler, is going out of business. Yes, it's lovely. And they told us, Chris, do you remember, they told us 3 years? 3 years. But their customer support already this year has pretty much plummeted and tanked. So Chris and her team have worked really hard and sat down with Teacher Ease, who's through School Insight, Infinite Campus, and we got a quote from Power School as well, trying to determine. So our financial piece is still through Tyler, but this is our student information piece, which we have to realize encompasses like our online enrollment. Is it compatible with Google? Is it compatible with our special ed portal? What about RevTrack Pay? So there's a lot of components to be looking at, and they've worked really hard on that. And we feel that Teacher Ease is going to be the best for us in that realm. So our goal is to go ahead and move forward with some training with our secretaries to hopefully do summer school under this new system so that we can get online enrollment and get some of those things set up. So I want to thank Chris and her team for, that's a lot of demos to sit through and information to dig through and trying to determine what's most compatible for us as far as all of the different choices that are out there. And stays within our cost range too, because they vary in cost. And so this one is the most compatible with what we're doing currently with Tyler. think that's it.
Does the cost of teachers fall within threshold?
It was like $1,500 more than what we are currently paying right now for Tyler.
Right, but like for the new procurement process, does it fall within the threshold of, or is it gonna come to the board once it's?
It's less than the $50,000. Yeah, it's 34, I think. So yeah, it does. As long as the big thing was that we got multiple quotes, but not just dollars. We sat through multiple demos to make sure that the program's gonna be compatible with what we need.
Did SIS turn did they sell or just shut
They
down?
merged with, yeah.
Yeah, they were just at
Infinite bought Tyler.
It's
that portion of Tyler.
They were just at the National League of Cities National Conference in November, Calvin and Tyler, and I thought they had SIS on there for like cities to use for their summer program.
Unless they're just getting rid of the education piece, or they?
Yeah, it's just this K-12 part right
Just the
now.
K-12.
There's some schools worried about the financial part, but we're not there, so.
I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that yet.
A reminder that the regular monthly meeting will be February 27th next month for the board. Mark your calendars. Anything else? Seeing nothing else on the agenda, we're going to adjourn and go back to executive session to finish up the things we need to get finished. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn back to executive session.